Okay, will we all rise, pledge the flag? Lead us in the pledge.
Please join with me in a pledge to Old Glory. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. You all for coming for the full committee work session on Senate Bill 11 relative to African American burial grounds. We're here to talk about where we are in this attempt at working the issue to come out with a bill that we can move forward with. Right now, we've had some. Oh, okay, yeah, I know. That's better. That's too many. I'm too laid back a person. If I were any further back, they'd be throwing dirt on my grave. They say, "Oh, he's dead." Okay. All right. I'm trying. Well, the goal I think we've tried with this work session has been to try to come to some kind of agreement that we could have if not a majority, at least it's not a unanimous, at least a strong majority on for an amendment to, and pass the bill, because I think we do see value, at least relative to this bill from last session in the interim study that we did. Right now, I don't believe we're there. Not even close. We haven't had much in the way of any meeting of the minds. That's why I canceled the executive session. I didn't believe I had enough to go into executive session. And it would be unfair to have a meeting and have people being assigned to vote on the executive session and not have it. So that's why I canceled it. What I'm going to propose is a subcommittee of individuals. It'll be an even subcommittee. I'm proposing I'm going to propose a subcommittee where the subcommittee would be charged with coming up with a bipartisan amendment to be able to be a bipartisan amendment to be able to get enough on the bill to make both sides content to be able to vote for the bill. And that's, I'm going to propose it, but not yet. I want to hear some discussion on that. Representative Rung.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Darby has done extensive research on this bill. He's talked to a lot of stakeholders. I actually think the work he's done would be the same work that a subcommittee would do. So I'd like to suggest that he give a background, a summary of what he's done and what he's, some of the learnings he's had, because I think we may have the information after that to be able to move forward to schedule the executive session. And as far as not knowing where people stand, it might be worthwhile also to go around the committee and ask people where they stand, because I don't even know outside of our caucus, I don't know where people stand on this bill. There may be people that, would support an amendment consistent with the research that Representative Darby has done.
We Representative McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think I appreciate Representative Rung's comments and all the work that Representative Darby has done, and I think it's equal to the work that a lot of us have done, myself included. I think I've probably put in about the same amount of time Representative Darby has, and appreciate his 12:30 in the morning emails, including the last two drafts. I actually haven't seen the official drafts of his latest two amendments from OLS. I suspect he has copies for us now, so I'm looking forward to reviewing those. So we've got three amendments floating around there now, and it's hard to form an opinion on those until we see those drafts. And I think that's the intent of the subcommittee. Here we have, 20 or 18 or so members and three amendments. So it's a lot of cooks. If we have a small group that can look at those three amendments and perhaps come up with one out of those three or a combination of wording out of those three amendments and then present it to the larger group, a single bipartisan amendment. I mean, I think it sounds like we want to pass something that satisfies the bipartisan group of sponsors of Senator Waters, Senator Carson, Senator Avard, and others. I spoke just last night with, I got a call from Jennifer at the New Hampshire Preservation Society, and who was quite pleased with the amendment that I last presented. I spoke last night at an event with Senator Carson, and she had some input. So there's a lot of information floating around there that I think that would be useful in the subcommittee. So rather than polling the committee now in advance, before they have all the information, I think we ought to go to a subcommittee. I mean, that's the purpose of a subcommittee, is to let them chew on all the data and then report back to the larger committee. And I don't even really care to be on the subcommittee, to be honest with you. I'll happily serve if the chair wants me to. But other folks can serve on it.
Representative LaMontagne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're all here now. We've come here to do the work of studying the bill together. And I don't see why we can't spend the time now to see if we can't come up with a bill that we can exec on in the future. Even if it is a subcommittee within this group here that does most of the talking about it, I think we can get there. Thank you.
Representative Darby. Oh, and by the way, I did get your the emails that you sent me, and I am impressed by what you've done. So
thank you, and thank you for. So I am with Representative LaMontagne. I'm not taking a statement on making a position on whether or not we should have a subcommittee, but I do think that there's some value in getting out discussing the positions and what the approaches are to various amendments, and so that we can hear from the members of the committee about where their concerns might be together rather than in a smaller forum. And I think, I spent a few minutes, with Representative Donnelly, Representative McHugh last week, and I think that it'd be better rather than having sort of these one and twosy discussions, like you mentioned, I had sent you some inputs. Just to lay out just to hear where the concerns are and where where the areas of compromise need to be. Thank you.
Any other, I'm sorry, okay.
Thank you,
Representative Wright.
Mr. Chair. I guess I feel like we haven't really worked. We had work sessions where we heard other people speak to us, but personally, I don't feel like we've had a chance to talk to each other about where the issue is. And I'm really confused about where the sticking point is, because originally when this bill came to us, I was like, why do we need this? I don't understand. Why are we making this specific and special to African Americans? So I went and did some homework on my own and realized that they were slaves. They didn't have last names. They couldn't be traced. I went to the Portsmouth, the new memorial. I read a lot about how these human beings were treated as property and not any better than a tractor or a cow. You know, when they were done with them, they were just discarded. And now in my heart, I truly believe that we need to do what is right and just and respectful and graceful with those human bones. And I'm unsure where we're sticking in these amendments and this issue. And I really need some help getting understanding that. Thank you.
Representative McHugh.
Would the member, Representative Ryan, yield for a question? Would you believe that the state archaeologists testified that they in fact do that now? And would you further believe that I agree with you that it wouldn't hurt at all for us to codify what you said?
He did say they go through that, but he said they're tracked through last names. You know, and so then indentured servitude, they're tracked, these beings are tracked through last names. Slaves didn't have last names.
So I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you, and this bill, I, like you, thought initially we may not need this, because from my research in current law and sitting with OLS, asking them to help me fix this bill, they informed me, and in reviewing the testimony, I thought, why do we need this bill? Because it appears that current statute calls for the treatment of remains respectfully of all origins, regardless of origins or circumstances of discovering it or what have you. But because I had similar feelings that you just expressed, all the same feelings, that there's absolutely no harm and certainly some good done by codifying and calling out certain groups, as precedent has already been set federally and in New Hampshire statute for Native Americans. So I essentially agree with you, but I also think that we agreed in the beginning that it may or may not be necessary, but it's not a bad idea. And there's some sentiment, I think, in parts of the legislature that in general, cultural, racial equality is a good thing, and treating one group differently isn't always a good thing unless there's some justification to do that, like there clearly was for Native Americans and may clearly be for African Americans in this case. So I think we're just trying to hammer out how exactly we do that, where to put it in law, and maybe in some people's minds, and I'm not speaking, I can't speak for other people really, if we do that. But I think there's enough consensus to do something. It's just to do it exactly how to do it. We've seen, well, at least one option in my amendment. I haven't seen the official versions from OLS. I did see the Google Doc version from Representative Darby. But Representative Darby, do you have the OLS versions that you can circulate around?
I have one. They were only produced today at, I'm sorry for not asking.
Go ahead. Yeah, this is,
um,
but this is more
Okay,
informal.
they were only delivered today at 8:52, and then there was a printer malfunction. So
Okay.
here's one.
All right, we'll still be here for another 3 or 4 hours. Representative Wolf.
Before we start passing out oh, too late.
Well,
I'd like to just resolve what you just said, Mr. McHugh, Representative McHugh. If we're on an agreement that it should be, pardon? I'd like to resolve what you have just said, that you think that there's goodness in the last representative's comments. Can we work on those before we start going through these 3 amendments? I didn't get them last night. I haven't seen any of these amendments. I got a notice at 3 o'clock that the executive session was canceled, and I was not real happy with that. So I think we ought to start to proceed and see whether there's a general agreement that we are going to proceed. And then we'll take Representative Darby's, or we can take yours. I don't know what they all are.
you want to say something? Yeah, okay. Go ahead. Yeah, I didn't know you needed to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even without looking at Representative Darby's amendment, if we're having a general discussion about, as Mr. Wolf says, where are we going, perhaps if he'll entertain a question, what is wrong with Mr. McHugh's amendment that takes it and puts it in with the Native Americans, but puts it in? My memory is last time Mr. Darby was not happy with that amendment, but if he's able to accept that amendment without 10 other amendments, or tell us why you don't like it, then maybe, as Mr. Wolf asked, Representative Wolf asked, maybe we could figure out, is there any option to make an agreement?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty straightforward. There's two pretty significant issues with that amendment. The first is that it really commingles this language with the NAGPRA. Closer to the microphone a little bit. Oh, apparently I can't speak loud. Sorry. There's really 2 significant errors. One is that it really commingles the language about Native Americans with that modeled after the NAGPRA law, which is based on federal statute. In particular, the first section of his amendment is really just, it doesn't fit into the intent of the bill, and it doesn't fit in with the process. That's why when the state archaeologist testified, he was very confused, because it just, the location of that text does not make sense. And when I went and talked to OLS, because of course I did that, and I did not say, when I talked to OLS, I didn't say, please draft this for me. What I said is, here's the sections that I see. This is how I don't believe that the NAGPRA related statute should be modified because there's traceability. So there's that one section. But the other section, and the much, much more important section, is the original bill had a new chapter called number 28924. In that bill, and which is pretty similar to this amendment, the last paragraph of 28924 talked about returning remains and gravesite artifacts that are held in collections. That was stripped out of the Representative McHugh's amendment.
Excuse me. Could I interrupt for a minute? I'm really distracted by this other conversation going on while we're trying to have a hearing together. And I find it really discourteous to Will that this is happening.
So those are the two main problems with Representative McHugh's amendment. Um, I agree, honestly, and the amendment that I have here tries to do exactly what Representative McHugh's amendment tries to do, which is more appropriately align the changes intended by the bill with existing statute. But note, there are multiple cases of African American remains. There's African American remains when you just discover bones. That's what 227 C covers. There's African American remains where, as Senator Waters has informed us in the past, are just outside of the cemetery boundaries. It's pretty easy to find just with simple Google searches, and I'm happy to share this research, where these cases exist today in southern New Hampshire. It's easy to find cases where there are believed to be African American remains that have not been reinterred, that are not marked on the edges of graveyards or on private property. It is easy to find this just with casual research. So that's the other section. So these are other sections. The other sections are where we have an abandoned graveyard. And then there's the sections on returning artifacts, and in particular remains, so that they can be reinterred. And that absolutely has to be accounted for in this, in the bill, in an amendment, if I were to support it.
All right. We're doing exactly now what I've been trying to get rid of. And that is, here's mine, there it is. And again, here's mine, there it is. And I'm not going to move from that. What I'm proposing with a subcommittee is you get yours, let's see if we can now come into the middle and get something that everybody can agree on. Do it like they do in Congress. You want something? Okay, let's now put it together and see if we get something. Not like Congress. They do a lot of money. But that's what I'm trying to propose with a subcommittee, is to be able to make a compromise bill. But it requires putting the I want to win and not lose away, and I want to get a win-win situation. That's what I'm proposing. I know that's asking a lot in the political environment. And the only way I've ever seen it done is when people will, be willing to compromise. If we can't do it, then let me know. And then we'll just stay here and fight till the end of the session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know that I have a position on whether there should be a subcommittee or not, but I do just want to recognize that we're talking about something that's really sensitive, and we're trying to focus on the importance of, in part, of having consultation and conversation with descendant communities of African American people who have passed and been buried. And I just want to recognize that we unfortunately don't have any of those folks at the table right now. And so I just want to be really sensitive that this is a little bit different than the average conversation that we're going to have in the House, and that I'm not sure what winning looks like. So I'm just really sensitive that however we move forward, that we can center the people and the souls and their descendants of the folks who we're talking about.
Who has not spoken? No, you have spoken. Oh, Who has not, oh, no, she has spoken. I just want to make certain I get the rest of the folks into this before, you like it. It's-
It was just brought up, there are no African Americans in this committee. I think that is one of the issues we're dealing with. I think that the African American community back, and I'm not saying now, I'm saying back then, were afforded no dignity. And I think that the fact that we're diddling around with this rather than getting something passed means they've already waited hundreds of years for that dignity, and we should provide it for them. That's what I think.
So you're not into giving, forget it. There is, and if I'm not mistaken, Senator, you have, mentioned that you have a background and, some of your heritage is, African American? If you, I think you've said that in your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I know, and I
Senator
know
Waters,
you're,
District 4. So I wasn't quite here. I'm a member of the
sorry.
Black Heritage Trail of New Hampshire Board of
Yes.
Directors and have worked extensively with the Black Heritage Trail of
I mean,
New Hampshire on and descendant community on these projects
Right.
for decades.
no, but I mean, I think the representative is concerned that there's no one in this, in this committee who has any African American background. No bloodlines. And I think you have testified that you have.
Thanks for your question. I have an interracial family. Myself,
Okay.
I do not, to my knowledge, have African American
okay.
descent, but I have, my family is,
I know
mixed-
Jesse
mixed
Waters
race.
says he does
Yeah.
on television. So, your-
But
your
let
nephew.
me just say that I think that the wisdom of this committee to sensitively understand and learn about concerns of the African American community is what we do as legislators. So I think that the sensitivity here is what we're all about, and I think we all share in that. So I appreciate the committee's interest. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see. I think you haven't. You haven't spoken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say, I think we're all very sensitive to what's going on, and that's why there's so much deliberation. But I was just hoping we could get back to the point of, it seems like we need to decide if we want the subcommittee or not.
Well,
Isn't that the question? If we could get back to that.
Well, let me tell you this. I can, as chair, I can just call for a subcommittee, and you don't have to participate. People don't have to participate, but I would hope they would, because it would make no value. So that's why I'm putting it to the committee.
So sorry, follow up. So do we, at this point, go around, are you asking for a consensus, or what is the next step, to decide, making the decision?
Eventually, I will probably ask for a consensus so I can find at least 6 to 8 people who are willing to put their sides, their positions aside and accept yes for an answer, and then work out a bill that could be acceptable to everyone. If it's not possible, then okay, we'll let it go to the floor, I guess. Representative Wolf and then Representative Rowe.
It seems to me, from listening to the discussions, that there's a disagreement between Representative McHugh and Representative Darby on what would be the best amendment.
No, I don't see
Well,
that.
okay.
That's not what
if-
I'm asking for.
That's what I'm hearing in this discussion. Representative McHugh said he didn't care to be on the committee, the subcommittee, et cetera. I'm suggesting that Representative McHugh, Representative Darby, and 2 others come together, make this committee, but they have to be on it. They're the ones that have the sticking points, at least in my opinion.
Representative Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a work session. And I guess I'm really frustrated because we're going around and around talking. We have 3 amendments. We have a lot of work that everyone's done. I just don't think it's worthwhile to prolong this and kick the can down the road with having a subcommittee. I think we've all come from all corners of New Hampshire today on the taxpayer's dime to work on this bill. Let's use now to review the amendments. This isn't about winning. This is about finding a bill that can capture and apply dignity to the remains of African Americans who are likely enslaved. We have 3 amendments. I know that with the testimony we had at the last work session, there were flaws in Representative McHugh's amendment, which were discussed. I mean, Representative Darby brought those up. Let's start from there. Let's start from the other amendments and just get this thing going. I can't see where a subcommittee can do anything that we can't do in the next hour.
Representative McHugh, then Representative Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't see the flaws in discussing it with the drafting attorneys. They made the recommendations on how to draft the prime sponsor's bill. I've discussed with the prime sponsors and repeatedly with OLS the right way to draft this language to accomplish what the prime sponsors want, including Senator Carson and Senator Waters, who's the prime, and Senator Avard and some of the other folks. And most importantly, this bill will get amended. So we'll need concurrence. Last night, speaking with Representative Wilhelm, who mentioned he might speak with Representative Simpson on our committee here, and Senator Carson, who will speak with Senator Pearl, who chairs ED&A, who will have to concur with this. So nothing gets done without concurrence. Let's be mindful of that. I mean, that's the process, right? So if we want to get this bill done, like fully done into law, we'll need that concurrence, right? That's what happens after the House passes it. Assuming the House passes it, if we get this bill out of here with a good recommendation, hopefully on consent, with a strong House position, that's our best chance to get concurrence out of Senator Pearl, right? And I had that discussion last night with them in person. So my recommendation to this committee is to take the closest position to the prime sponsors and a very long list of bipartisan Senate sponsors who have a strong position on this bill. And our closest position is that first amendment that was drafted not by Representative McHugh, but by a team of OLS attorneys. So they review it amongst themselves to make sure it's technically accurate. Right. And we've taken the thoughtful language of Senator Waters and put it in the right places. And the reason that 2028 date was taken out was to make the return of those remains forthwith. We all know what forthwith means. We also want to make this law endure past 2028. Right? So I don't see other flaws in this, and that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of a bunch of good legal minds. So that's my opinion. If you want to get it done, that's how we get it done. I mean fully across the finish line into statute because of all those other steps. That's my current opinion.
Representative Ryan and Representative Darby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Darby.
I'm new at this. I'm confused. I've been an educator for a very long time and a social worker. We have a problem, right? Personally feel like we are bringing all these other invisible people into this problem that are hearsay or secondhand information, and we're not addressing the problem. The problem is we have a bill. Do we agree on this bill or not? We're here to work today. I feel like those hard conversations need to happen here. And we need to figure out, before we get into the weeds of the amendments, what exactly is the problem that we're facing right now, deal with that problem, and then move forward and decide if we need a committee to resolve it. I don't know if we're going to make consensus. I don't feel like we need the you win, I win. I feel like we haven't gotten to the core and the root of our work. And I don't feel like we've done work on this committee on this bill. And today I'm prepared to stay, to have those hard conversations, to work this bill until it's something that we can agree on or agree to disagree on. Thank you.
Representative Darby, and who else had their hand up on this side? Well, I know I have you. I know you're definitely. But did you have?
I did, yeah.
Oh, want him first?
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah. You're on.
You know, with respect to what Representative McHugh just said, maybe we can hear from the prime sponsor, Senator Waters, about his position on Representative McHugh's amendment.
Oh, definitely, Senator. This is a work session, so just you want to say something. This is. It's a lot less formal in a work session.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And you could stay there, and participate.
I appreciate that. I really respect the process in this committee, and I as a senator don't want to feel that in any ways that I'm kind of casting opinions on the process that you have. Because it's a great committee, and I really appreciate the amendments and the work that's been done on this, and I'm grateful for that. When I look at what Representative McGiff had done, I think he has found a way to get to the heart of this bill, which is just consultation with the dissenting community to make sure that's happening, and then also to make sure that we get materials out of collections that have been there for far too long, and to make sure we have a process for that. And I think that his version accomplishes that. I know there's kind of one piece that is left out of there that is included in Representative Darby's that people have some care for, and I think philosophically I have care for that as well, but I think the functionality of the bill is achieved successfully in the version that the Representative McGiff has brought forward. So that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Yeah, Alexis.
I just wanted to make a clarification, which is if we were to end up with any sticking points with the Senate, we would also have the opportunity of a committee of conference if they were small different disagreements. So I just wanted to add that to the process conversation.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question of Senator Waters? Senator Waters, you mentioned there was something, a sticking point in Representative McHugh's amendment that was included in Representative Darby's. Could you specify what that is?
I don't mean to say it's a sticking point, but I know that there's, and I had in my original bill that, which is in the very end of Representative Darby's amendment, that it's the policy statement, basically. And that, I mean, that's the impetus for me. But on the other hand, it's the effect that counts. Is the descendant community going to be respected and brought in? And these remains going to be treated respectfully in the version by Representative? Yes, they are. our archaeological and remains and other items that are in collections going to be found and respectfully dealt with? They are. So I think that's the heart of the bill. And I would add, this came out of Senate ENR, so it's going to come back to ENR. And I have a feeling that the Senate will be pleased to see a successful resolution to this that the House can produce.
Well,
Follow up. So Senator Waters, if that policy statement was added to Representative McHugh's amendment, would you consider that an improvement?
You have my original bill, but as I said, I respect the process here. I see a consensus here in trying to do something that addresses the two key issues. So in some ways, the policy statement is valuable as a commitment of policy on behalf of the state of New Hampshire. But on the other hand, the policy, if it's enacted, also represents that value. So I'm not just playing with words. I appreciate the spirit of this committee and the conversation, and I respect the way that you feel you can best move forward. So I'm not trying to, kind of pivot and wiggle away, but I hope you hear me say that I value the result.
Okay, one last question, Mr. Chair. I want to direct this to Representative Darby. So we have Representative McHugh's amendment, the policy statement. It establishes policy. It establishes the position of the state, and as it's implemented further down in the bill. I forget, Representative Darby. There was another issue with Representative McHugh's amendment that may be able to be improved upon. Can you, I know you were discussing it when he was having a private conversation with Senator Waters, and it was distracting. So could you just reiterate what that was? Thank you.
Just trying to collect how I want to phrase this. The two things that I brought up was the commingling of the statutes based on NAGPRA with African American remains, and the disposition of remains and gravesite artifacts from private collections. Those are the two. I understand that Representative McHugh's amendment attempts to address the latter of those two I don't have the amendment in front of me, but it's in the first section. It's at the bottom of the first section. That when I spoke to OLS and I spoke to the same lawyer, that did not come across. And this is really, I think, an inappropriate place for this statement. But honestly, I think that Senator Waters is much closer to the African American community than I am. And I think that if he thinks that this meets the intent of his original, or it makes good strides towards the intent of his original bill, then I would be definitely willing to support it.
you have a question? Of whom?
Of you.
Okay.
Please, thank you for accepting my question. I feel like to do this work, we just received some of this information in front of us. Is it possible to take both the documents side by each and give us 3 minutes to just read them without interruption?
Yeah, why don't we go for, you have a, it is, and I'll make a decision on that in a second. There are people who have hands up. Representative McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Brung, for bringing up that policy statement issue. Representative Darby brought it up when he first noticed that it was missing. I actually hadn't noticed that it was missing because I didn't request that it be removed. So I inquired why that was taken out. to OLS, because like I've mentioned a couple of times, it wasn't my intent to alter the language per se, and certainly not the intent of the bill. It was just to get it in the right spots and in the proper form when I went to OLS, the drafting attorney. So I circled back and said, where'd that go? And the answer was, it's removed during chaptering, number one. Number two, we don't typically, so the law is the policy statement. Passing the law is the policy statement. The policy statement is essentially superfluous, right? It is, you can put it there. We don't typically do that anymore. We have done it in the past. You can find policy statements in other places in RSA. It's unnecessary. It does communicate legislative intent. But the potential problem with doing it here, I'm sure you can figure out how it might cause somebody to pull it off consent or make an issue of it down the road somewhere. So if we want to get it done, it could be, and I'm theorizing, it might make it a better bill to keep it out. I'm not necessarily opposed to it either way, but my objective is to get it done. And so I circled back. Again, I didn't expressly ask that they delete it. I did go back and ask why. And the reason wasn't take it out to help you get it passed. But when I thought about it and thought about somebody out of the 400 or 424 who might read it specifically and think, anyways, I'm sure you can make the jump, how it could go, especially where often that language gets removed in chaptering anyways, because it's not the RSA. So that's the language. And thank you, Senator Waters, for supporting my draft of your bill, and thanks for helping us get it done.
Representative Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've heard from the prime sponsor on this, that basically they're accepting of the amendment that you've introduced, Representative McHugh. I think Representative Ryan's suggestion for a 3 to 5 minute review of the documents makes sense.
Well, she
I
would have
would
gotten it 5 minutes ago.
Huh? I know. I'm just trying to move it forward. I'm trying, it makes sense, and I suggest we do it, and then we come back with a straw vote on this thing. We can't exec it today because you didn't call for it. But if we have a straw vote, and we've heard everything around here, I haven't heard anything why we don't accept the amendment.
Well, we haven't finished the discussion even on, well, I agree, we should take some time to read what the actual amendments with the original bill in hand, but also I still have maybe a forlorn hope of being able to populate a subcommittee, because there are other issues. I mean, I would like to, I would like to see something that raises all boats, that we make the mention of all races, colors, creeds, etc., are treated the same. And you could also, I believe that there is a special issue, a special case concerning African Americans that should be addressed, but also have a situation, have a bill that specifically also says it recognizes the all the sanctity of all graves as well, so that take away the issue, the political issues that seem to be on the happening in this country right now. But at any rate, I'll take say 15 minutes to read the bill. Say read the bills at, say, 20 after.
Could I ask the Democrats, maybe we can go across the hall? Bring your papers with you.
Well, would you like to caucus? Yes. Well, then ask for caucus. For how long would you look to caucus?
Whatever you call, 15 minutes.
Okay, all right, yeah, make it 15 minutes. Republicans will stay in caucus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After the meeting of our caucus, we reviewed both amendments, and the amendment 1597, the First Amendment brought to us, we think that that fulfills the intent of what we're trying to do here. We've heard from the prime sponsor that he's satisfied with it. The one issue that the difference between that and the Second Amendment, which we received today, is regarding the acknowledgement and treatment of unmarked graves that abut just the outer boundary of existing cemeteries. And we were wondering if there is an amendment that could encompass that onto the First Amendment. We're good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe it's already covered in current statute, though. It's already covered in current statute.
Well, I'm not quite sure in the correct chapter it's involved in, and it is, and the distinction of that section and why we would like to see that incorporated is that that tends to be more of a common practice where African Americans that were likely enslaved or living during times of enslavement, their remains were buried outside. That was kind of customary then. So we want to see that that's acknowledged in this amendment.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I noticed that. I think it's a pretty simple fix that you could say burial ground or burial. So that way, if there's a formal burial ground with a number of people or delineated as a burial ground, but if somebody is just buried randomly out in the field, which did also happen, that is a burial. So I would think that Representative McGurk could take a look and see where it says burial site, just say or burial, burying ground or burial. But I think that's what Representative
Yeah.
Rung is trying to get at.
Is that, just so I'm perfectly clear, is that on the first page, line 15?
Yes.
Okay, so remains from a suspected African-American burial ground, comma, or burial,
Correct.
and
And
then on line 19,
yes.
burial ground, comma, or burial. Yep,
Yes.
I'll find it.
So, before we get too far with that, though, I did look up the definition of burial ground, and it
I
is,
think it covers it.
it covers it.
Yeah,
It-
that's
if
why I
you
thought it was
look
in
up,
current
it's
statute.
codified. It already, it's very, it doesn't have to be a formal burial ground, but anywhere that a person is buried is a burial ground. That's a definition already in statute. But I can get it to you, but I don't have it.
It was a discussion that I had. We actually talked about that and access to it, and I had a lengthy discussion. I mean, I think I nearly got, it was late on a Friday, so I nearly got kicked out of the attorney's office because I was laboring this point. Anyhow, so I'm happy to go back and add those couple of words, but I really don't. I think I'm going to get pushback and be told that it's redundant, and I'm going to get pointed to the definition. So what we could do is reference the definition in statute, but again, I don't, if it's not already referenced. But I don't think it's, I know I'm going to be told it's not necessary. Sorry, I'm blab.
Representative Rung, I appreciate your suggestion about further amendments, but I don't mind saying that our caucus would like a bunch of more amendments. But we thought that we could take a straw poll based upon the testimony of the senator and other discussion I heard earlier to see would we support Representative McHugh's amendment as written. Then I think that does 99.9% of everything we need to do, and it's ivory snow, and we can move on. So I'm going to propose that we take a straw vote so we can move forward. and a positive thing that we're all together and maybe even go to consent, I'm going to move a straw vote that we accept. If we had to vote, would we accept Representative McHugh's amendment as written? Can we take a straw on that? And that
Yeah.
might get us going.
I just want to quote someone, a very wise person told me, don't allow the perfect to be the enemy of good. So I will agree, and I agree. This does get it without that change, 99.9%. So I know I will support it.
All right. If you will support what is the number of that amendment, Representative?
1597,
One five-
1597H.
Will we support? Is this a straw poll of you support 1597H, the amendment in its entirety as proposed? Raise your hand. All in favor? Here's-
Okay.
We
Thank you.
have it's unanimous of those in attendance, by the way.
Too bad we canceled the executive session, Mr. Chair.
Well,
Yep.
too bad we didn't agree to this before.
Can we make a
the
call?
exec-
Is there any way we can make a call to the clerk? I know.
No,
No.
no.
Yeah, oh,
No.
never mind.
No,
Wishful thinking.
I read I already checked with the clerk if it were possible, and you cannot do it. Well, we'll just have it next week. Okay.
Can
If
we
I-
put it in the calendar? So it'll be a week from today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you want to have it sooner. Will you
Yeah.
all want to come on Monday? No, I
No.
don't think so.
Mr. Chairman, you have somebody down there.
Yes. Well, I like to eat. and then
Well, we have
lunchtime.
we have a
This'll
Hillsborough
be
County
the-
convention during lunch on session day,
That's
Well-
right.
so we can't do it then.
Representative, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
If we have a vote earlier in the week, well, I guess it doesn't matter because it won't go into that till the next calendar.
It has,
Right.
well, the calendar, yeah, it'll be next week. The,
Could you, Mr.
would
Chairman, could
be-
you put it on for like 8:45? Because if we're all in favor, we're not going to have any discussion. You're going to open the meeting, call the vote, and then we leave. We could go to session.
Oh, that would be great.
But it,
We have a
But-
caucus.
Did-
we're
But-
gonna have a.
Yeah, there,
Representative, it won't be on that calendar if you do it at 8:45 in the morning. The
Uh,
calendar's already published.
No. This is a calendar be out tomorrow.
You want to do it tomorrow.
No. No, be the
Next session day.
next session day.
The 18th.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest if we have it before session begins, it conflicts with caucuses.
Yeah.
I suggest, even though we may be 5 or 10 minutes late to the Hillsborough County convention, we had to take a quick vote during lunch. Perhaps we can meet first for 10 minutes because we're only gathering 20 people rather than the Hillsborough delegation. So maybe if we have the vote, for like 10 minutes, and then those representatives from Hillsborough County can go on to their convention for their quick vote.
Why is it that every time I get talked out of going, out of keeping to procedure, I get screwed up? So
I think we should stick to the 17th.
stick to the, I'd like.
We
to-
could do the
I'd
17th.
like to just call it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Call
that's
it-
fine.
and that's-
17, 9 o'clock?
You want it 9 o'clock or, well, I usually like maybe noontime.
How about 10?
How about 10 o'clock?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock?
on the
All
17th.
right, I'll go with 9 o'clock. Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to say before we took the straw poll that I felt like we didn't discuss Darby's amendment at all? And given that we're all saying we could support McHugh's amendment, that was there not some parts of Darby's amendment, Representative Darby, I'm sorry, that we couldn't also include in this? And could we have any more discussion? I feel like
Then-
we're done.
We're done. We just made the agreement. Everybody.
Well,
yeah,
that's,
no.
yeah, but
Uh,
we
I
didn't
mean-
really have a discussion
Well,
Oh.
technically,
everything on the table.
that amendment is not before the committee. This is a work session. So it will have to be brought to the committee, and then there is we have if someone wishes to, there could be an additional amendment. That is not, we're only bound by our agreement that we made. And that's, that's the agreement we made. But nothing will can stop anybody from making following another amendment. I would, if it got to that, however, you're known by your word in this business. So I would be careful doing that.
Yeah, I'm not
would
saying
not-
I'm
yeah.
going back on it.
right.
I just felt like the work we were going to do in this session was incomplete before we took that straw poll. That
I didn't ask for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Representative, you might feel in open session, Representative Darby's bill was not discussed. I can guarantee you, we discussed it in caucus, and I heard Representative Rung say you discussed it in caucus. So with both of us discussing it in caucus and then moving on Representative McHugh's bill, it really was not applicable that we needed to go back to talk about Darby's amendment. That's why it was not brought up on the floor of the convention here. But it was definitely discussed in both caucuses, so we think it was covered. We weren't trying to diss Representative. It was there. We discussed it. Just so you'll know. Thank you.
I mean, having been here close to 20 years, this is how the sausage is made. That's,
We all set?
yep. I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
All right, good.